What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to my channel. The art of storytelling is something that has been crafted and developed and has grown to be one of the oldest skills in the history of time. How tradition was being passed from generation to generation, how great philosophers built their arguments, how great psychologists found the best ways to handle their psychotic patients, how history was made, all of it is credited to storytelling. However, if you noticed something lately, the art of storytelling is dying bit by bit, and it's dying at the expense that people are more skilled, more advanced, more informed, and more connected. Yet, for some reason, we are losing the greatest facet of the society, which is storytelling. For example, if you look at some of the greatest artists of all time that we keep talking about, for example, people like Tupac and Biggie, their entire career was based on a story they were telling. Two people who were once friends and buddies grew to be enemies that could not sit in the same room. And every single song of those two guys that you're going to hear of, it's all about their story. It's all about their development. And that's why they've been ranked as the greatest artists of all time, because they told a story all of us can relate with, whether you're naive or not. And that is the power of storytelling. And that's why they're the greatest. And tell me some of the greatest inventors. People like Einstein, people like Isaac Newton, they were never great because of what they did. They were great because of the story they told, and the story that is being told today about them. And that's why we are studying them, because they left a story. And that brings us to something that we could ask ourselves, that what is a story? And why do people really find themselves in a position where they can relate to stories more than they can relate to everything else? And why a story? Because description is definitive, but it's not consistent. And that is what builds the strength of storytelling, the power of consistency and the power of prose. For example, a story is built on an introduction that develops into a body that has a conclusion, a lesson, or a consequence based on the action that was introduced past. And so at any point of the story, you can connect the whole story. You can preempt what might happen. And sometimes it comes with satire, sometimes it comes with sarcasm, sometimes it comes with suspense. But all these are built to ensure that stories are well told. And the element of systematic organization of ideas, thoughts, and events in a story makes it the greatest tool, because for some reason it's hard for people to remember procedures, but it's very easy for them to remember story. You know why? Because a story is one thought that has been spread in different stages, while a procedure or a description are different thoughts in different stages. And so human brains analyze a story as the same thought over a long period of time. And that's why it's easier for us to remember stories than it is for us to remember descriptions and other forms of conveying information. And that's why we trust so much in historical documents that we have, because they were built on the chassis of great storytelling. So how do you tell a story? The first thing that you need for you to tell a story is you. You are the story that you are telling. you are the most creative version of yourself while you're talking about you, because then that is the only thing you can talk about somebody else can't talk about. That's the only unique thing you can say that somebody else can't say, and that is the first step of how to tell a story. The second way of how to tell a story is identification of the audience. For example, you want to talk about lifestyle. Your story is about lifestyle. Who consumes content of lifestyle and what are they interested in relative to lifestyle? And so you have to build your story relative to your environment. It's the same story you could have built in another environment, but how you package your story makes it unique. And the third step of how to tell a story is have one complete thought that you intend to achieve at the end of that story. Otherwise, you get yourself fumbled. The reason why the internet is boring today is because we are telling all stories at all time, everywhere, to the extent that we cannot consistently understand an artist. They do album after album. They are great skill. Trust me. Rappers today are way more skilled than people like Tupac and Biggie. We only give Tupac and Biggie respect because they told a consistent story throughout their career and we can relate to that story. But today, everybody has a rap about a girl, a dog, a beach, whatever you want to talk about. And all these stories are not consistent. The reason why the Beatles became one of the greatest band, if not the greatest, not that today the bands are not great. Trust me, there are a lot of bands that can do 10 times more than the Beatles ever did. The problem is the Beatles were very concrete and discreet in their line of storytelling. While today, we just sing because you know how to sing, because you can sing, because you want to sing, and because you have platforms. The reason why people like Lucky Dube and Bob Marley and Burning Spear stood the test of time and are still being talked about up to today is because of the consistency of their work based on a complete thought, their story. So this is a challenge to you. Ask yourself, what is your story? How are you telling it? Who are you telling it to? And at the end of the day, have you packaged it in such a way that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years after you're gone, just like Shakespeare, somebody is still going to read your story and feel like you still exist there? Just like great philosophers like Nietzsche, people are still going to read your work and ask themselves, was this person thinking in the future? Will you be somebody whose story is put down to be studied? For example, the Bible is just a story. That's the reason why we really relate to it, because it's a story that has a beginning and has an end. How is your story? Or are you just feeding the world with information that they can't cope up with? Thank you so much. You've made it to the end of this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment about your story in the comment section. Thank you so much. See you next time.